Hello and welcome to this Taking Time with Tasha, where today I'm going to be working on this pair of jeans that needs to be repaired. They have a little hole in them just by the pocket on the left hand side, which I can only assume has been caused by the repeated rubbing of some keys or perhaps another sharp object. As it's worn away some of the fibres of the jeans, but some of them still remain. These belong to a good friend of mine, and I can only assume that they are a favourite pair of jeans, otherwise I don't think that they would have asked for me to fix them. And as you can see, they have already been repaired once, which I am unfortunately going to have to remove the remnants of. Sorry, Georgia. So I'm going to be darning the hole today in an attempt to try and fix it a little bit more permanently. And so first of all, I need to select what threads I want to use for this. These jeans have a white weft and a blue warp, which are the two sets of interweaving fibres that make up the fabric. And so as you can see, some of the weft, the white threads, still remain, but the blue threads have been rubbed away. And so I've chosen a white thread to work with in the horizontal, and I'm going to add a blue thread in to be woven into it in the vertical to try and repair the hole. First of all, I just want to tidy it up a bit and take away some of the excess fluffiness from the wearing away of those fibres, and just familiarise myself with what we're going to be working on, where I need to give the most focus to. I'm going to start with the weft. As I've already got some of those white threads to work with, I'm going to intersperse some new white threads in the cotton that I've chosen to use. These are going to be new, and so they're going to be strong, but I'm going to weave the old ones in as well, so that hopefully everything blends together nicely, and at the end hopefully should be strong and durable once again. Jeans are, well, denim is a great fabric and has such a rich workwear history. It is so hard wearing, obviously this hole not being included in that, but generally jeans are very hard wearing, and I know that the owner of these jeans does wear his clothes quite heavily, and does a lot of manual work and putting them under strain, so the occasional necessary repair is not really surprising given that, and I'm sure that these jeans have given him a good amount of life already, and hopefully have a good few years left in them once this unsightly hole is gone. So getting these extra weft stitches in, just gonna work back and forth across the fabric, looking to add some extra threads in there so that I've got plenty to weave with, and securing each end so that it doesn't just pull as one long piece of thread like a running stitch might. So I'm adding some stopper stitches at each side and working to the shape of the hole as it is. Obviously not all holes are perfectly circular, and so each time it's just about looking at what the hole needs and where the stitches need to be, and just adding in what is required by the piece. The existing weft stitches that are left have a sort of slight sponginess to them because they are that bit older, and these jeans have clearly been washed a fair amount, so the fibres have softened, and so getting these extra new cotton stitches in is really going to help to strengthen them and give them the resistance that they need. Nowadays, denim is generally made with a bit of give in it. Initially, when it was developed as a fabric and then taken into the workwear sector, it was very unforgiving and it was really stiff and hard to wear, partially because of the indigo dyeing process. It's quite an in-depth dyeing process and utilizes some very interesting ingredients. Perhaps I'll go into that another day. But yeah, initially denim was really quite hard to wear and almost uncomfortable to wear, but it did last a long time. In more recent years, a lot more has been done to soften up the denim and make it a lot more wearable for people, and so it has been taken very fondly into our general clothing choices. I don't think there's anyone I personally know that doesn't own a pair of jeans, and they are a personal favourite of mine. I often reach for my jeans on the weekend. I try and keep them just to the weekends, to be honest. During the week, I do prefer to wear my workwear clothes and reserve my jeans as weekend clothes so that I have a bit of difference to my wardrobe between the working week and my off time. I don't know if anyone else does that. It seems a bit silly to have a sort of self-imposed uniform, but I find that having the difference in what I wear mentally helps me to relax a little bit more on the weekends and focus on other things. And then while I'm at work, being dressed a certain way does help to give me focus and I guess just to be comfortable that I know I look professional, and so I can just get on with doing my job as I need to rather than worrying about what I look like. Don't get me wrong, I don't dress too smart because I don't need to. I don't wear a suit, for example. You guys already know what I do professionally. I'm an embroiderer, so I can, within reason, wear what I like, but I do prefer to err on the smarter side for work, just because that's what I personally like. Although my smart clothing, I think, definitely has a little bit of a creative flair to it, given what I do and the sorts of things that I like. This kind of repetitive work I do find quite soothing. I think I've always had a fondness for those sort of repeated tasks, and it's probably partially what drew me to sewing and embroidery in the first place. That sort of preempting of the next move and the associated sounds is quite comforting, I think. And it's that sort of older skill set that I quite enjoy learning about, trying to keep traditional skills alive. I don't specifically remember when I learnt to darn. Traditionally, obviously, darning is usually done over a mushroom, which is a little curved-topped wooden piece that you would stretch the item over so that you've got something to kind of push against when you're creating the weave and closing up the holes. And it was usually used for things like socks. So in that context, if it was a knitted sock, you would just kind of be closing up the holes and bringing everything together. Or if it was a woven piece of any description, then you can weave back into it with your darning. I've just stretched this piece into my frame, as I had an embroidery frame that was able to get inside the leg of these jeans. They were generous enough for that, so that's allowed me to get some nice smooth tension going and know that the fabric is being held at the right tension for the weave that I'm starting to now create in amongst it. Keeping these sorts of traditional hand skills alive and knowing how to use them is definitely something that's been in decline. There's a bit of a resurgence for it. In the last few years, I think people are starting to be a little bit more aware of not being as wasteful and trying to buy a bit better and then repair it and really love your items, rather than the culture of fast fashion and inconspicuous consumption that we were in only a few years ago, really. And the more that kind of goes on with the environment and the more aware people are, the better it will hopefully be, but the more these sorts of skills will be necessary and required again, and therefore hopefully become popular once again. As a lot of people associate embroidery or darning in particular with definitely with something that, you know, your grandmother might have done, and not necessarily something that teenagers and 20-somethings might do or know about. They may have heard the words, but whether they've actually done it in practice is a slightly different thing. It's nice to have a project like this come up every now and then. Obviously this one was sort of presented to me, and I'm more than happy to help on that front, and it is really quite nice to be able to practice these sorts of skills. I haven't darned anything in a little while. It's got to be a good few years. And although it is quite a slow process, this reasonably small hole will take a good few hours to fill properly. So it's definitely a bit of a patience game. But if it's a piece that you really love, and particularly with jeans, people have this thing about jeans, don't they, that if you find the perfect pair of jeans, you've basically won the lottery. So I think if you have an item that you really, really love, then it's definitely worth trying to fix it and wear it and use it again once it's fixed. And kind of each repair that you make to it becomes a little bit of that item's story, which is quite a nice concept in itself, I think. It's always lovely when an item, not necessarily clothing, has a bit of a story, has some history, even if it's only your own history. But I always think that, you know, if you lose something for a while and find it again much later on, then that becomes part of its story and adds value to the piece. I guess in more of an emotional sense than anything else. It wouldn't mean anything to anyone else. They wouldn't pay you any more to own that item from you because it was lost once. But it adds emotional value, I think, and that's definitely worth it, even if it just means that you are that little bit more invested in that piece. Having said that, obviously I don't mean go out and lose your things, but I do think that if something like a hole happens to one of your items, a garment say, it's kind of a nice thing to embrace, and that's kind of partially why I like darning so much. It's not an invisible mend by any means. I'm nowhere near that good. But you will be able to see that it's been repaired afterwards, and I quite like to enhance that and invite that repaired aspect in and acknowledge that it was damaged and has been repaired, and that is part of its story. As you can see now, I've just started to bring in the blue thread and am looking to now start to weave up and down in between those white threads. At the moment I'm still in the main part of the body of the jeans where the weave is still just about whole. So it's just a case of trying to strengthen the general area around the damage and then work into the damage as well. I'm still putting in some little stopper stitches at each end so that it can't just pull tight and kind of close up and get all gnarly and pulled. It is quite tricky to get in between each of the weft fibres to go up and under each of the white threads that we have. And there will be times that I've caught two together or haven't quite perfectly made the pattern. But again, for me that feels like it's a little bit part of the process. And as I say, it won't be perfect at the end, but it will be fixed and it will look a little bit more interesting for it. Hopefully having the blue thread in there will make it a little bit more subtle than if we just used one thread throughout, as we are trying as closely as possible to emulate the way that the jeans were woven in the first place. Unfortunately, I can't replicate the slightly sort of diagonal nature that you get on drill fabrics, of which denim is one, and you can see that running through the rest of the fabric, that it has a slight diagonal line to it as well. You might be wondering why we didn't just close up the hole with stitches and pull the hole shut, but because it's quite a sizable hole and it's been worn away, that would have caused the rest of the fabric to really pucker and not fall in the same way. So hopefully by choosing this method, we will be able to maintain the sort of inherent structure of the fabric and the characteristics that it displays as it moves. Of course, this little patch will always be ever so slightly different from the rest. But I quite look forward to seeing what it's going to look like when it's done, as I just pop a few of those fibres across and tighten up the weave to work my way across the rest of this piece. Thanks for joining me for this Taking Time with Tasha today. If you've enjoyed it and would like to see more content, please do consider subscribing to the channel to be the first to know when I release a new video. And do let me know what you've liked and disliked about it in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Have you tried darning yourself? Are you familiar with the technique? Are you keeping these old skills alive? Until next time, bye for now.